Hi, welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. I want to talk to you today about some ideas I have on how to be a thrifty quilter. But before we get started, I would ask that you subscribe to our channel and click on the bell so you get notified of new videos as they drop. Wouldn't want you to miss anything. So now, how can you be a thrifty quilter? I'm sure you have gathered that quilting can be an expensive hobby. And just like all hobbies, quilting can be expensive too. If you decide on a project and you go out and buy everything you need from scratch to make that project, it's going to cost a pretty good bit. All the products are going to be new, and probably the pattern or the instructions for the project call for a lot of things that you may only use once. Or you might find you don't need it all, but they do make it a little more handy. I've got some ideas of how you can do it a little more economical. So let's start first with your pattern. Do you need a pattern? Do you need to buy a pattern? Or do you have your own ideas of how to create a quilt? A lot of times I try to come up with my own ideas because they're original, they're purely mine, and I don't have to buy a pattern. So that would be helpful if you're trying to save money. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a pattern, that you shouldn't buy a pattern that I have, or that you shouldn't buy a pattern that somebody else has. But there are sources for patterns that you can find that can be inexpensive or free. So look out for what's there and take advantage of that. Now, once you get past that pattern stage, fabric. And fabric is going to be one of your most expensive items because it is the main material that you use, pardon the pun, for a quilt. So where can you get that fabric? Well, a lot of it is in the sourcing and how you source it. I would tell you first and foremost, if you're out shopping and you run across a fabric that you really truly love and you know you would love to use it in a quilt, if you can get it for a bargain that day, by all means get it. And probably buy a little more than you think you will need, because we do make mistakes, and the quilt that you decide to tackle with that fabric may need more fabric than you think. Then, beyond that, I would encourage you to shop sales, use coupons or loyalty programs where those exist to get your fabric less expensively. Then there are alternate sources of fabric. You may decide to buy fabric from someone that you know, someone that advertising fabric leftovers on the internet or through Facebook or community garage sales. Or they're just destashing what they have. Those could all be good sources for fabric. Also, some of the internet sources can be good sources for fabric. The only qualm that I have about that is I can't actually see it. I'm trusting that what I see on my computer or phone screen is the actual color. So if you're looking for a fabric to jump off from, that's a great idea. Then I would encourage you to shop your stash. That fabric that you bought 2 months ago for a project you are not ready to start, or you haven't decided what it is, could be a great source of fabric for the project you're working on now. I've had that happen a couple of times where I realized that what I needed I already had. I did a puppy dog quilt a couple of years ago, and the quilt, I bought the quilt pattern and I bought some of the fabrics, but I was able to go to my stash to find some of the other fabrics that I needed. For example, in the little ears of the puppy dogs, they used a pink fabric. And I found in my stash the perfect pink fabric that I already had, and I had enough of it to do. So that was an expense where I didn't have to put out cash for it. Then I would encourage you to recycle. I see lots of pictures of beautiful quilts that people make from men's plaid shirts. Who would have guessed that you could take and buy some secondhand men's shirts and make a quilt that is as beautiful as some of these I see? Now, the prices for used shirts in the consignment stores and the thrift stores may not be quite as cheap as we like, but you have to look at how much fabric you're getting for the price that you're paying for that shirt versus what it would cost new in a fabric store. I would caution you to check the labels to see if you're buying a blend or if you're buying something that's 100% cotton. But that could be a way you could save money as well. So those are a couple of different sources for your fabric. And then for your other notions, your thread, your pins, your so forth, I would encourage you to buy only what you think you really need. You could use a basic gray thread in your piecing versus buying a thread specifically color matched to what you're working on. Because for piecing, it's probably not going to show, and that gray will blend just fine. Now, if you're doing something like quilting and you want it to blend in, or if you're trying to color match everything on the quilt, that's a different story, and you may need the thread that matches perfectly. And then for tools, a lot of tools can be used for different things. You could use a square for making diagonal cuts, for making right angle, 90-degree cuts, a lot of different activities that you can use with this. So I think that basically what you need is something you can cut long straight lines, something you can measure with, and something that has a right angle and maybe a 45 angle. Although even with that, if need be, you could actually do it without it. So keep your tools in the beginning to a minimum. What I would recommend overall is when you might start something simple with very few tools, and every time you do a quilt, maybe add a tool to your toolbox that would help you in the future. I know I have a template back here for a pineapple quilt tool, and I think that this might be one that is kind of limited. It's very specialized, so I'm yet to see that it's something that I can use for a lot of different quilt designs, but for this particular purpose I actually needed it, and that was a good reason to buy it. Basic tools like needles and pins and scissors and so forth, I would encourage you to buy a good quality tool. Don't get something that's super cheap because you'll just be replacing it soon, but you also don't need the most expensive one as well. So just something that works well, keep it for your quilting and sewing only, and utilize those as long as you can. And always, as you have the opportunity, you can upgrade with tools and fabrics and notions as appropriate. So I hope that that gives you some ideas of how you can quilt and not break the bank, because if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. Don't let somebody else make you feel bad because you can't afford the most fabulous fabric there is. The enjoyment in quilting is in the doing and seeing the product at the end. Unless you're producing quilts for shows and for judging, the enjoyment is for you, not the judge and not the prize. So keep that in mind. I hope you have a great time quilting, and this has helped you a little bit in making some decisions about what you need to purchase and how you might find alternate sources of fabric. Please like us. And also subscribe to our channel. The more subscribers we have, the more time we can devote to putting out videos to help you on your quilting journey and to share some of the quilts and techniques that I use. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio.